call the meeting to order and get going here. Roll call has been taken, and we have quorum. And before we get to approval of agenda, I'd like to take a minute to welcome Tim. It's his first meeting he has been able to attend, so it's good to see, number one, that you've made it for obvious reasons, and you're getting better from your injury there. Everybody got a copy of the agenda? And is there a motion to approve as presented?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Agenda's approved. Approval of minutes for June 22nd, 2021 meeting. Has everybody got a chance to look at those, read through them, and what do you see any corrections, or are we going to take them as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Minutes from the last month's meeting are approved. Public hearing. Lighthouse Construction Incorporated request for variance. The applicant is seeking approval of variances to the ordinary high water level setback, minimum lot size, and minimum width of Clay County Development Code to allow construction of a residential dwelling in Lot 21 of LM Oak Shores Acres, 27609 82nd Avenue South in Hawley, parcel 24.005.0121, section 15, township 138, N, range 45W, in Park Township. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now open. Matt, would you fill us in on this, please?
Yeah, so this is a variance to the dimensional standards in the Special Protection Shoreland Zoning District. Policy considerations from our comprehensive plan, our natural resource goal to identify, protect, and preserve county's high-quality natural, scenic, cultural, open spaces, continuing to monitor and inspect residential and commercial areas with on-site sewer systems, review, consider soil suitability for placement of individual sewer, utilize soil suitability information planning new development, and continue to enforce shoreland regulations on the counties, lakes, rivers, and streams. So this property and all immediate adjacent properties are zoned shoreland special protection and floodway and that's not right. They're zoned general floodplain. So just shoreland special protection and general floodplain. So this property is Lot 21 of L&M Oak Shore Acres. It's currently a vacant lot in a residential subdivision that was platted in 1972. This is kind of where it's at on the map in the county, so southeast part of the county.
Excuse me, Matt, you're not showing up on the display.
Let me try something here. How's that? So the applicant is seeking variances from 8-5B-5 dimensional standards for SPRD and SPLD districts, table 8-5-1 to reduce the 150-foot structure setback of Lake 15, from the ordinary high water level of Lake 15 to 100 feet. Reduce the 150-foot structure setback from the ordinary high water level to 135 feet for the septic. And then reduce the minimum lot size from 1.8 acres to 0.6 acres. And reduce the minimum shoreline length from 225 feet to 85 feet. And so those standards are up on the screen. Because this is what's called a lot of record, meaning it was created before our zoning or our development code went into effect, if it meets 75% of the lot area, it can be considered buildable without a variance. And so these are those standards from our land development code. So they don't meet the lot area and width requirements. They are allowed as building sites without variances if the following are met. Proposed use is a permitted use in the zoning district in which the lot of record is located. The lot has been in separate ownership from abutting lands at all times. It was created compliant with official controls in effect at the time. Sewage treatment requirements are met, and setback requirements can be met. And if those setbacks can't be met, then a variance is required. So I'm going to back up here and show you where this lot is on the lake. So it's on the north end of Lake 15, just off of 37 and 82nd Avenue. This is all part the L&M Oak Shore Acres. And so you can kind of see why the shoreline length is minimal, is because this parcel here, this neighboring parcel, kind of wraps around this one almost halfway along the length of that property line that's nearest to the lake. So this is the lot right here. So this is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. It's kind of hard to see, so. So they're looking at a little over 1,400 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom residence. There is a deck off the front, and that's where they measured from the ordinary high water level to the structure setback, so 100 feet 10 inches, and then 64 and a half feet or 64 feet 5 inches from the center line of 82nd Avenue South. Total impervious, as you recall, we have a 25% impervious surface limit, and the total impervious for this proposed project is roughly just under 17%. So this structure would meet all the side lot setbacks, the township road right-of-way setback. It's just that ordinary high water level setback that they wouldn't meet. They're also considering or are planning to do a vegetative berm on the lakeshore side of the project just to control or mitigate any potential runoff from adding that impervious surface. So here's some pictures of the site. This is looking at the lake. That fire pit is roughly kind of where that deck would go, the end of the deck would be. And then this is the buildable area looking north and west. This property there is a flat spot on kind of the roadside portion or extent of the property. It does drop off as it goes to the lake. It's not would be considered a bluff, but it would be considered a steep slope. Steep slopes are anything the slope of 12% or greater. So if approved, we'd recommend the following conditions: that perennial vegetative berm to be installed, and then if possible, construction no closer than 20 feet to the top of that slope or where that starts to to slope down. Any questions for me at all?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions for Matt.
Go ahead, Ezra.
That's 17% impervious?
Yep.
Does that include maybe the future garage?
Yes,
Okay. And then it looks like the lot just west of there has a house on it. Do we know what year that was constructed? And how far away that house is from the lake? That one there.
that was constructed in 1975. They also have an adjoining lot though,
Yeah,
as well.
but that looks, how could you, it looks like the house is, looks like there's a garage and then there's a house closer to the lake, right? Just from that picture there, right? Or no?
Right here?
Yeah, that looks like the house there, correct?
Yeah, and we didn't measure
Yeah,
that, but, yeah,
that looks closer than 150 feet too, so.
yeah.
That's all I have right now, Chair.
Okay, anybody else have questions for Matt?
Mr. Chair, I have a question or two.
Good, Trey.
So Matt, this proposed site plan meets, if I understand you correctly, it does meet all side lot setbacks and rear lot setbacks.
Correct.
And does it fall within the 75% of all of those other setbacks that we were talking about?
With the exception of the ordinary high water level.
Okay. And even at that, 75% is no need for a variance, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So this request does fall in that with the exception of the one ordinary high water mark setback.
Correct.
And they're looking at a reduction from 150 feet to 100 feet.
Correct.
And is this another one of those instances where the county restrictions are more stringent than the DNRs?
Not for Lake 15. Lake 15, the setback is 150 feet. On other natural environment lakes, it's 200 feet. And so it's in line with the state.
Okay,
So the shore impact zone would be 75 feet from the ordinary high water level on Lake 15.
no more.
Anybody else?
I have one thing to clear up with Matt.
Okay.
This lake's 150, like Lee Lake is 200 feet for the state, I mean, for the county, right?
That's correct.
But the state's always been at 150.
Yep.
Did you hear anything from the state on this project? or-
I did not. They were noticed about it.
Anybody else have any questions at this point for Matt?
Another question for Matt. If this was to be plotted out now, would they be allowed to have a .6 acre lot there with only a,
No.
no? So because
No.
this was
In
plotted.
1972, it was good, but
Yeah,
in
now it's changed.
2021, not so much.
A little equity there. That's all I have now.
All right, any other questions?
I have one more question, Mr. Chair. So it does meet the requirement that it hasn't been owned by a neighbor or anything, that it's owned privately by someone else other than,
Yeah, in my checking of that, yes, that's the case. It's never been combined with another lot or, yep.
have there been variance requests on this property before?
And when I did some looking into that as well, and I did not see any variance requests for this property in our records.
And our records go back to,
70s, 60s.
Any more? Any other questions? Just point, would the applicant like to speak to the board about your application? Applicant, speak to the board. Would you step up to the mic, please, and state your name?
You gotta come right up to the.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, please state your name for the record.
Yep, so it's Stefan Bame with Lighthouse Construction on behalf of the landowner. One question or one thing I wanted to bring up that Matt had addressed earlier on, and I just wanted to, just for clarification for the setback from the septic. And we've done this in the past because, you know, with septic, you know, with the drain field system to keep it further away, we pushed it back further than the 100 feet for the house. But that does get a little closer to the road right of way than it's off 33 feet, but it's not off the additional 20 feet off the 53, you know what I mean? There's a 33 feet setback plus 20 feet. So we thought it'd be better to be closer to the road right of way than the lake. Usually that requires township approval. So I'm not sure if that requires any modification of the variance at all, but that was our plan of how we were going to handle the septic setback from the OHW.
So because the septic setback from the road right of way was not included as part of this, we wouldn't be able to make a decision on that tonight. That would have to be a separate variance request.
Question for you, Matt. Could we just make a condition on here saying that if they get township approval?
No, because they would still need to meet the
That the town
standards of the development code, which say you have to be 20 feet from the right of way, from the road right of way.
or septic system?
Yep.
So
May I ask a question? Could we try to modify the setback for the lake so we can meet the road? I mean, we'd still be behind 100 feet comfortably per the structure request.
You could do that just because it wasn't explicitly stated in the public hearing or in the public notice that you were seeking 135 feet. So that is something you could do. How many feet would you need then?
If I could pull up the project manager who would know more about the size of what we would.
Setback for the sewer, we would.
Could you state your name as well? Yeah.
Kevin LaFay with Lighthouse Construction, so. If we can get the 100-foot setback off the lake for the proposed septic, we'd be able to make the septic fit with the road setback too. They give us roughly 35 feet for the drain. 29 width of the drain field. 3 runs.
Anything more to say about your proposal?
I mean, other than the fact that, you know, trying to make a very equitable approach for someone trying to build out there and everything's been very well stated, no.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant at this point?
Thank you.
Now we've come to, is anybody in the audience that wants to speak for or against this proposal? For or against?
So, how this will work is I'll just call your name and then, you'll have up to 3 minutes to kind of state your case. And, if the board has any questions for you, they'll ask you. So first up is it Russell Pesto? Pesselman? Pessola. Sorry about that. So you're up first if you wish to speak. Thank you. What, James Vanette? Did you get that right? Thanks.
James Vanette. I own lot 17 and 18 and co-owner of lot 16, just around the bend from this site. It's perhaps unfortunate that Ben nearly clear-cut that land, removed almost all the trees. I think there are 3 or 4 trees. You were at the site, Matt. You saw the amount of trees and vegetation that was removed. One of the beauties of this lake is the amount of vegetation that surrounds it, and that the houses have sufficient setback and sufficient vegetation that they virtually disappear during the summertime. In the winter, you can still see houses, but that's for ice fishermen. So I would hope that there would be some concern on the part of the construction crew and this board to reestablish some of the vegetation that has been depleted and would end up blighting that beautiful natural forest that surrounds that area. I understand that all the lots in the L&M subdivision are substandard, and we've often questioned how you could build a home on that small lot. And we're hopeful that the board's comments and recommendations will allow that to happen so that the rest of the people who use and enjoy the lake can sustain that beauty.
Thank you.
Got Stephen Vanette?
I would like to echo the concern also that this lake is intended to be a natural lake and that homes, except for ones that were grandfathered in before the rules were established for the lake, are intended to be unseen from the water, that there's enough vegetation and they're set back enough so that you really cannot see the homes that exist there, again, except for in the winter time. And if there's a variance to be given, it really should be given from the road and not from the lake. The setback from the lake is the important part of the consideration for lake owners in that area. And so if there's anything that could be done to keep the setback from the high water mark, but change the other zoning restrictions, I think that definitely would be the way to go. It is absolutely true that all of these lots are they're strangely shaped and they're hard to work with, but I think that we can compromise together to come up with a reasonable solution so that some building can go in that place. If you do look at the map that's up right now, we can play which one of these things is not like the other, and you can see from the sky that there is a lot of trees that are missing on that particular lot, and it is not at all parallel to the lots that surround it. And so something needs to be done in order to protect the sight lines and the views from other people on the lake. We all need to play by the same rules, and we need to follow common guidelines. And so we ask that those rules be followed.
You?
Mark McGrew?
Yes, Mark McGrew is my name. My wife and I own lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the opposite end. Hi, Bruce. Paul. I guess I just got a few questions on this. Talking about the hill shape, is it what do we call it? Just a hill or a
Steep slope.
steep slope? And the other one that the DNR doesn't like is bluff. Have you got that information from them on this particular case? Right from the DNR?
Not on this case. The DNR doesn't go out and measure bluffs typically, or establish bluffs. It's up to the local governments to make that determination.
Well, we had them come and do it on a couple of variances that were asked for over the last 20 years. They'd come from DL. And they had to stop a project because it was on a bluff. The other one is this high water mark at 100 on one side and 150 on the other from the from the lake. Are you saying you want to put the septic closer to the lake, the drain field? On the side where it's only 100 foot from the high water mark?
My recommendation would be to put it closer to the road.
Mine would too.
Yeah.
Again, I'll mirror the first two gentlemen that the lake's supposed to be almost impossible to see your home when the foliage is up. That lot will have to be fixed with a lot of big, beautiful trees that are suited for that land. And it isn't, we don't like to look at people's homes, but that's really more for people in Fargo and Moorhead and things like that. We just like the natural beauty. And of course, in the winter, it's goes back to, there's no leaves, but it's really important for the people. That's why I built on this lake. I could have built on Cormorant or Pelican, but it's just not my cup of tea. But I do appreciate the chance to talk, and thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mark or anybody. I'm curious, when the first speaker was talking, you mentioned Ben removed all the trees. Who's that?
My apologies. I don't remember Ben's last name.
Oh, but
But he was a previous owner of that land, and then he sold it to Susan, someone else. I'm sorry.
okay, so have these trees been off there for a number of years? I mean, by the pictures, it looks somewhat like it, but, and were they removed with the intent of another residence being there that backed out or something? Or?
I'm only going from my understanding of the situation, and I believe Ben was planning on building there and then removed the trees as a first step in that building process.
And I'm, to anybody's knowledge, were those trees taken out then in the 70s, do you think, or the 80s, or just curious?
I believe his name was Ben Blair, but
Okay.
that could be mistaken. about
Was
that.
it during, I'm asking, were they removed during before the new rules came into effect?
No, they were removed in the early 90s, if my memory serves correctly. And they were removed with the intention of putting a camper on there, sort of a fifth wheel, if my
Okay.
memory serves me correctly on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, so roughly 30 years ago, those trees were removed, if it was early 90s? 25, yeah. Right.
Did you have any other demands?
Yes, Kenneth Hall.
Yeah, I'm Ken Hall, from 275 to 182nd Avenue South. I have the adjoining lot, lot 20, next to lot 21. And Ben Blair, there was a covenant there about campers at the time. And when he found out, he talked to Mr. Magnuson and the sanitation guy at that time. I can't remember his name, but he was told that it was going to be impossible to build on that lot. He sold a lot on contract, and those people, unfortunately, didn't check with the county to make sure that was a buildable lot. And again, they were told by Magnuson and Jaster, I believe his name was, that was an unbuildable lot. And so I had a septic system fail. I had to buy the property next to me in order to put a septic system in that would meet requirements. I don't understand what's changed in terms of, I mean, the slope to the lake is the same, the size of the lot is the same. The people that came before weren't able to build. They weren't even, granted a variance hearing. And so it remains the same. The lot is the same width, the same depth, same soil content, which means the septic system, is it all runs downhill, no matter what. We still know that all that stuff runs downhill, whether it be toward me or towards Rick Grandroot's property or towards the lake. And for that reason, you know, I'm really opposed to a building site there. And I think that the board should consider that and consider also the previous owners who were declared unable to build on that lot. I think that should be, Ben Blair moved off the lot, and I don't think he really informed the people who bought the lot that there was a restriction. I had a fellow come to my door asking me about the lot, and I said, before you think about doing anything there, you should check with the county. And he did, and again, was told it was an unbuildable lot. And like I say, nothing's really changed. The depth and the width of the lot, the slope to the lake, and the soil content is all the same. So that's my objections. Thanks for your time.
I have a question for him, Mr. Chair. I have a one quick question for you. Do you know how close your house is to the lake?
My house was built in 79, and yeah, I really don't have an exact, I'm not sure exactly how far it is. I know I had to have a variance to put my garage in from the road. I did not build the house. It was built in 79, I believe. I moved in there in 84. But like I say, I was told that in order to comply with septic standards, I would have to purchase or get an easement to run my drain field onto the property next to me. And that required like 990 square feet of drain field. Thank you. Anything else?
No.
Rick Granrood.
Well, I got pretty much everything said there, what Kenny Hall said. I don't think there's no way you should be able to put a septic system that close to the lake. I don't think, you know, there is setbacks. And that's for a reason. That lot's not big buildable. He goes back to Ben Blair. I think they had actually sold that property 3-4 times. I bet if you went back to a thing where it's always come back a non-buildable lot. And all these people keep getting kind of screwed on buying this property where they can't build. Now, why should that change now? You can't build a house on that property. It's just peaceful. Drain field, you can't have a drain field 100 feet from the lake. I mean, you gotta use, there's gotta be some common sense. A DNR says 150-foot setback. Why should that change? It's a non-buildable lot and it shouldn't be done. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I believe we do have our environmental health director on to speak to the septic as well. We want to give him an opportunity.
That'd be very good. Let's hear from him.
Hello, this is Kent Severson with Environmental Health. In regards to the septic, I walked around on the property. Obviously, everything is very tight. I guess what I was looking at is if we were doing a 2-bedroom sizing on this, we would need roughly 1,000-gallon tank and about 500 plus square feet of drain field. There additionally would be an option to go with a mound system. This would not be due to any sewer rules or, you know, limiting factors in the soil, but more so the square footage that it would take up. And for a mound system for a 2-bedroom home, we'd be looking at dimensions of rock, basically about 10 feet wide and 27 feet long, and then add a few more feet on each side for the slopes coming down. But that's about what I had looked at there on the property to date.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for him.
Yeah.
This is Ezra Bear. So you're saying a septic system would fit on this property?
I think it could. I guess one thing that I'm not aware of yet is plans for a well. We would need to maintain 50 feet off at a minimum for tank and drain field. And like I said, I'm not sure if that's been, if there's a location that's been plotted out as an attempt to drill or not.
On our map, there shows one, and it looks, yeah, well over 50 feet from the proposed septic site on our diagram.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, then, you know, the options there, small home, 2 bedrooms. If we did the conventional way and the soil allowed for it, we'd be looking somewhere between 500 and 550 square feet of a drain field, or we could look for a smaller footprint. And again, not because of soil conditions, but because of size-wise, we could put a mound in there, and that would be roughly, like I said, 10 foot wide, 27, 26 feet long, and then add a little bit for the slopes on each side.
I have a question for you. If things been brought up about the setback from the ordinary high water line, would that affect that at all?
I think in the spot that's being earmarked and proposed for the septic right now, I mean, it obviously would need the variance to go through to lessen it from the 150. And my phone cut out here earlier, and I know we were talking about the 135 and possibly changing the setback from the road instead of the lake, but I didn't catch where that conversation went to when I got disconnected.
I think if they moved, it would be 100 feet from the lake rather than 135, if I got it right. Is that, does it have to move the 30 feet off the road?
20 feet.
20 feet, so we could give them 110 foot.
115 then.
Yeah.
No. So Kent, this is Paul. On the plan here, or the original, when you were talking about the original layout of the septic drain field area, what was the width of that originally? I know you're proposing a mound at, or you said there could be a mound at 10 feet wide. What would what would the normal one be?
Well, if the soil's allowed for trenches, typically a trench is 3 feet wide, and would need to be spaced in between the lines at least 3 feet. So for 500 square feet, it'd be roughly about 170 lineal feet, and then divide that up into, fingers as needed to wrap around and go to places. And it kind of seems to me that, like, looking at that approach, the answer comes real fast to probably adjust back and do a system such as a mound that would take up a lot less area and, alleviate some headaches on making sure we stay proper distances away and get what we need in the ground.
And you, I'll just ask the question so you can answer it. Do you feel like in the soil types that you saw, below the trench level where the biomass is, do you feel that there's leaching that occurs below that line, or do you feel it's pretty well sized enough that it evaporates off?
In our experience, when you get close to the shoreline areas, there's been a lot of times, a lot of instances where that ordinarily high, seasonably high watermark in the soil, which is the key point that we're trying to look at for the septic systems. Typically, that should be pretty good and would allow for trenches to go in. We would need a minimum of 3 feet to separate the bottom of whatever we use for drain field to the ordinarily high watermark. And looking at the soil there, I mean, it looks like a decent loam, some sand, and I guess maybe to answer that question, I'd say I don't foresee a problem with that at this point.
Okay, but if you went to a mound, it'd even be safer.
I guess I don't think I would say safer. I would say easier because of the space requirements that will be needed for the structures on this property. Okay. But technically, a trench system or a mound system, either one is, accepted and should be just as safe as the other, I guess I'd put it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might,
Good.
to follow up on what Paul was saying, if they went with a mound system, they'd have a smaller footprint on their septic system and they could push it as far as possible to the road or come back at a later date and apply for a variance to get closer to the road, which would increase their setback to the lake, the footage setback to the lake. Is that an accurate statement?
I would defer to Matt on that one. Was it discussed earlier then that any setback changes for the septic system would need to be a separate variance? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. When I originally talked to the applicant about this, my understanding was that the septic proposed was 20 feet off of the road right of way. And if that's not the case, because that wasn't part of the public hearing notice, that would have to be a completely separate variance hearing. One of the conditions of, in those shoreland standards for lots of record is that adequate sewage can be provided. And now, if adequate sewage can't be provided because they can't get reduce the road right-of-way setback, I think it would be difficult to consider the current variance without knowing that first. If that makes sense. So you wouldn't be able to grant the current variance without
the other one.
Without the other one.
Okay, okay. And as of right now, the 20 foot off of the right of way, or essentially, what would you say, 53 feet from the center line?
Correct.
That was not specified in this language then?
Not in the language for the public hearing notice, no.
Okay. Well, I think like what was mentioned earlier too, I mean, if we're looking at which setback we'd want to adjust and, it'd make more sense to try and get further away from the lake as was stated. And, if we had to pick one, I'd pick that. But, yeah, ultimately we would, whatever the board decides they would like to do here, I think there's options.
I think I would like to hear, that being a little bit closer to the lake, it seems like the concern is that's going to cause problems with the lake. You do not think that'll cause problems?
I don't think it would cause problems. However, that being said, water only goes in one direction, and if there's some issue unforeseen by us or anyone, water goes down, and so does the wastewater. So in that instance, I'd say I'd rather have it further away from the lake, but at the same time, I don't have any reason to say that because we were closer to the lake, that's going to cause a problem.
Anybody else have any questions for Ken? I guess I'll thank you for your input.
All right, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
There's a public member online, Scott Gerke, with a question. Is the home vacation or year-round residence?
Did you hear that? It would be a primary residence, year-round?
Yeah, and I do have a couple other questions also.
Is this Scott?
This is Scott, yes.
Scott Gierke, okay.
Yep, we're just right across the lake from this location. I guess one of the things I'm curious about is it's the questions regarding, I can understand the questions regarding the septic system, but isn't that kind of a moot point since that's not even a topic of this request for variance? Or is that being dealt with at this time also?
It's still within 150.
So it was to be dealt with at this time, but we might have problems with that at this point. But that was part of, it's all part of the Variance, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Just
The
to,
letter that I got just stated that it was regarding construction. Then the other question that I do have, I mean, I have to agree with Rick and the other people that have voiced opinions on as far as the buildable lot, protecting the shoreline. We have, if you look around the lake, you know, there is some houses that were built, I believe, like in the 50s, you know, that were grandfathered in, but, you know, there's a rash of people that are like clear cutting, you know, the front of their homes. So I suppose they're improving their view of the lake. You know, is this going to be, if it's approved, you know, how will that be enforced to be able to make sure that it's not, you know, clear cut like to the lake? And then the next part of it is if it's not even remotely close to a buildable lot, how is this even being considered? And especially if previous owners have been told by the county that they could not, you know, even request for a variance, let alone get a hearing.
I'll just say that you can always request for a variance. You can be recommended not to, but you as landowners always have the right to request for a variance. In terms of lot size, I'd say that this lot size is on par with most of the lots on this lake in terms of lot size.
That have homes built on them?
Yes.
Okay. Was it 0.6 of an acre you said?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was like, what, 1.8?
No.
Is that, no, okay. Well, what is the minimum size, sir?
The minimum size, they'd have to be 75% of the minimum size. That would be 1.8 acres.
Okay. So this does fall quite short of that then even.
That's about 64% less.
And that's why he's here for a variance, correct, Matt?
Correct.
Yeah. Then as far as, I guess, addressing the question as far as clear cutting, you know, clear cutting basically the front, what do you want to call it, the trees that protect the view of the home from the lake. How is that even regulated?
That is regulated through the shoreland ordinance of the county.
And then is there supposed to be a permit or what, where's the, I guess, the letter to the regulation for that? Because I was always curious what that was.
You wouldn't necessarily need, you can do, so in the development code, you can do limited cutting for views. You cannot do clear cutting or intensive vegetation removal. It's unfortunately a little subjective because there isn't any hard and fast number, and then or in terms of you can clear 10% of the trees or 20% of the trees, or there isn't a standard like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak for or against the proposal? Yes, you can.
Kevin LaFay with Lighthouse again. I just want to bring up the proposed septic right now is 30 by 50. As the gentleman was saying from the sewer inspector, if we were to do a mound system, that would drop it down to 10 feet wide, plus or minus your slope. So if we could be granted the 135.5, that would get us 20 feet off the road right away, so we wouldn't need a variance from the road right away.
So you're saying you're gonna put a mound system in if you get this permit?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much gonna have to. I mean, we kinda assumed we would. We kinda oversize it on the plan, so we know we got a block there to use it. As far as any of the runoff and stuff, you can see on our plan, the vegetated buffer to contain runoff after the house is built, so.
Thank you.
Not knowing where the, maybe I can ask, so the bluffs or I'm looking at this plat, that's kind of what I'm going off of. That's an accurate, right, print? So where are these steep spots that they're talking about? Are they, how close are they to the house? And the other question I have, if everything is about, we're trying to mitigate as much as we can in consideration of the variance, what range does that house have? Why is the house out that far, or could it be brought back? I'm kind of bringing that up. Does that need to be 100 feet?
I think that's a question for the builder. He want to know why the house is set back off the road that far.
Or is that because of another setback? But I don't think it is.
So you're only 100 feet off Lake 15. I think what he's saying, if you move it back towards the road, you'd be further off the lake. I believe that's the question.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, basically where it's set at is probably the most level spot on the lot. When I was actually out there with the lady from the county, we kind of positioned the house to where we'd minimize the runoff to the lake. And talking with her, I mean, realistically, we're, 114, 115 feet off of the lake from the actual foundation of the house. We're almost 100 from the deck. With the future garage, driveway, and the sewer, we kind of gave a little buffer so we can have that sewer tank maybe out in front of the house too. But as far as buildable area and minimizing the runoff to the lake, it's probably the best placement for it. Because you can kind of see right where that fire pit is about the flattest, and then it goes up another hill. You're just gonna maybe have issues with runoff if you build into the hill.
I'm gonna throw a question I'm gonna throw something out there to you, and this is off the top of my head. If you flip this thing over, you wouldn't have to, you would be, if you put the garage on the other side where the septic is and put the septic over where the garage is, you'd be far enough off the lake. And move the well over to the other side of the building versus on the left side of the building rather than the right side of the building.
You're thinking as far as the septic?
Well, everything, basically.
Well, we have the neighboring well on the other property that would interfere with the septic setback then.
That's a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, to answer your question on the top of the steep slope, was at 85 feet just to the left of that fire pit. It's 85 feet from the ordinary high water level. Yep.
One more time.
So just to the left of that fire pit that's up on the screen is where the slope, the top of the slope is 85 feet from the ordinary high water level.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead. Well,
That gentleman just had me curious. What's the deal with now, future development? They're gonna put a garage later and stuff like that? Well, then, do they have room to do that later? Are you gonna let them do that later?
yeah, have room.
The garage would meet the 150-foot setback from the ordinary high water level, and the footprint of it has already been included in the impervious surface calculation.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll do any good. Do you want to put this map up so folks can see?
Yeah.
It's pretty small. Can you see where it's at there? Right there? That's the future garage. If the well wasn't on the other property, it'd be an easy fix, I think, but. It's not, so. Is there any other comments or questions from the audience? I see hands.
Mark here, Mark McGrew again. Looking at that map, you know, walking around, common sense says you just move the house back. Move it back all the way to parallel to that planned septic system.
Too close to the road.
How close is it?
Well, the septic system is just out of the right of way, so it's 20 feet too close to the road. That's what they're talking about. They have to move that away from the
Well,
road.
that septic system's too close to the road already?
In that picture is,
But a mound system wouldn't be.
Okay, well, how far back could you move the house?
You could move the house theoretically, looks like it's 64 feet 5 inches from the center line of the road, and if you're looking to get to 53 feet from the center line of the road, you could move it back 11 feet 5 inches.
Well, it's going the right direction.
And that was the reason of my question, you know, about the slope or whatever, what was around it.
Well, they mentioned that it was the best place because it's flat. Well, Caterpillar makes loaders. If you have to level it off, level it off. If it puts you in the hill a little bit, you're gonna have to build retaining walls. That's what I had to do. I built back 250 feet. Rules are rules. You gotta make it fit. Just move it back as far as you can. It's going the right way. And the mountain system, I think, is the only way to go.
So, Mr. Chair, if that were the case, if that were doable, that would be technically the minimum variance then that could be granted.
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. Ed?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not certain, and it's a question for the engineer, if he's actually done soil testing out there. He made an assumption that this is a loam soil. And having done sewer work on lots 17 and 18 very recently, I can tell you it is a very heavy gumbo clay yellow soil that subtends the forest duff that is developed. And the drainage from that is, it's nearly impervious to water. Clay does not allow water to move through it very well. And I don't know if we have an engineering report so that the soil drainage and so forth has been determined, but it may change the size of the septic system and the mound. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience?
Just a thought that we know the lake is fragile. We had water started to go through Lake 15 from Turtle Lake several years ago. And almost all of us immediately after that saw such a further growth of weeds in the lake. And it just suggests the lake is fragile. And that's a change that's ongoing.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience?
I have one. Okay, the contractor's here, but not the owner, is that correct? Or the buyer, whoever's, oh, so a question for you. Is there, how do you see, I guess I'll ask, how do you see about, or how do you feel about the idea that the lake for many of the people has vegetation in front, trees to be, you know, out front, and yet this one's been, you know, you're taking it as something that's been cleared. Would you have any intention or anything to be bringing trees or vegetation back to that area? Oh, well, vegetation's there. Let's talk about trees, sight lines, that type of thing.
Before you answer that, please state your name.
Yeah, my name is Lee Wallen. To answer your question, me and my wife have no issue with adding more vegetation. We don't really want to clear out any trees towards the lake. We want to keep as many as we can, like even closest to the house that we can get away with. We'll, yeah.
Would you ever consider planting trees?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that was already in our minds before we even started all of
To
this.
have it be of a similar, not exact, but of a similar
I think-
type of look to the rest of the lake?
Yeah, they're all oak trees, I believe, around that area, and yeah, they're beautiful. I'm not looking forward to cutting down any of them right now.
No. Okay, I was just talking about potentially filling some of the gaps
Yep.
for the sight lines from the lake.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually surprised how much it was already cleared out
Okay.
before we even saw it, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ask again, is there anyone else in the audience who wants to make comments for or against? Once more, is there anybody, any more comments for or against? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Public hearing is now closed. Facts and findings for this.
Can I ask you a couple more questions on that? Being we're closed, or do you want to do these?
Oh, do the facts and findings?
Ask him now.
Okay.
Okay. Number one, is granting the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Clay County Land Development Code? Is the requested variance consistent with the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the applicant establish there are practical difficulties in complying with the strict letter of the development code?
Yes.
Yes.
The size of the lot. And the high water setback because of the size of that lot. Is that good, Matt?
I would add the other adjoining property as well.
Well next to the other property.
Causes problems. Do exceptional or extraordinary circumstances exist that apply to the property in question and do not apply generally to other properties in the same zone or vicinity resulting from lot size or shape, topography, or other circumstances over which the owners of the property have had no control or influence?
Yes.
Yes.
Same as above. Lot size, the topography.
Would the literal interpretation of the provisions of the Clay County Land Development Code deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of this ordinance?
Yes.
Yes.
Is the variance being granted the minimum variance that would alleviate the practical difficulty?
Yes.
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 Does the variance request meet all the below criteria? No variance shall be granted where any of the following are not met. Adequate sewage systems or water supply capabilities can be provided.
It sounds like that would work, yes.
The plight of the landowner or hardship is not due to circumstances created by the landowner.
Yes.
The variance would not allow a use that is not already allowed in the zoning district.
Yes.
The essential character of the locality would not be altered or not be a significant adverse effect on the surrounding properties.
Yes.
There would not be a significant adverse effect on the public health or safety.
Yes.
The variance does not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance, by this ordinance to owners of other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district.
Yes.
Yes.
That being said,
You gotta do shoreline district, right?
Yes, that's correct.
time for discussion. Men, what,
Oh, you gotta read one more.
this one?
Yeah.
Shoreland districts, is there a conforming sewage system present for the intended use of the property? The variance as issued must require construction of non-conforming sewage system, treatment systems. Must require reconstruction of a non-conforming sewage system.
So that one can be no, because there is no sewer system, right, Matt? It would be conforming once he puts it in there.
And you could put NA.
NA?
Yeah.
Oh, NA.
Or,
Not explicable.
Okay. So, what's your thoughts?
I think Paul had some,
Well, I'm open to this, to try to make something work. I guess, for me, I want to mitigate as much as possible. And meaning that if there's, I think that septic system needs to be a mound system. I think the house needs to be pulled back as far as the house can be pulled back.
so like if we go 110 feet?
Well, whatever I want to, if we can just go off minimum variance, is that the words I can use, Matt? Or do we have a specific number that would work with?
give me 1 second here. You would need the minimum. So if you wanted to go right up to the road right-of-way setback, at 20 feet off of the road right-of-way, you would have to be, that would make that 100 and, let me see if I can do math here on the fly. Let's see.
And I'm throwing this out for discussion. It's kind of where my head's at.
That'd be like 112 feet, wouldn't it?
I thought it had 11, didn't it? Is that what it was? Thereabouts?
It would be, so it could go back 13 or 11 feet, 5 inches.
So if we say 111 feet, give them half a foot buffer,
To ordinary high water.
ordinary high water.
And then the house would be further back from that. That would just
Yeah,
be
that'd be
with a
the deck.
deck.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or the patio.
yeah. Because the patio's 100.
But that does count. The deck does, it does count.
Yeah. I don't think anybody questioned the deck not being part of it.
Okay.
And then are we affected by the future pad? Because
That's all in that.
that's all okay now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's 153? Okay.
So, Paul, you're saying roughly 111 feet from ordinary high water mark. Correct, Matt? That's what would be the minimum variance we could grant.
Correct.
And then go 135 feet for the septic with a mound system as a condition.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question about, is not the size of a mound system predicated by the size of the house that it's serving, not necessarily the soils that it's sitting on?
I think there
Bedrooms, number of
it's
bedrooms.
bedrooms is the way I is.
Right, so no matter what the soils are on this lot, if they go to a mound system, we can pretty much know the size of what that mound system is. There's no mystery there.
Kent designs it.
Right.
Make it.
Kent approves them
And inspects them.
and inspects
Yep,
them. He doesn't-
so-
He doesn't design them.
Okay.
Just to clear that up.
No, and,
Yep, this is,
oh, go ahead, Kent.
I was gonna say, yep, that's correct. I don't design them. I approve the designs that come in. And yeah, basically the number of bedrooms is the major factor driving tank size and drain field size. Soils are also taken into account on all the systems. But as far as all the different kinds of systems go, the mound is least affected by that soil type. Because for the most part, we're doing our sizing based off of the sand that we're bringing in to act as our filter. So, soil type does factor in, but not as much on a mound system.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I will just add that new construction in the county doesn't occur without a septic permit for a house. So, in just looking at an initial investigation of this property and that Kent's done and saying that it's doable, if for some reason, when doing the more intensive site inspection and site visit of the property that the septic wouldn't work, we couldn't issue a building permit for it.
And then Matt, I have a couple of questions here. I don't know what our variance can or can't include, being, on this rural property like this, do they go for a building permit with the county?
Yes.
Okay. And so with that, is it with the permit, conditions could be made as far as the vegetative berm, or?
That could be made for the variance.
For the
They have to be reasonable conditions that are directly related to the variance request.
Okay,
So if
so that would be appropriate as
so
part of this.
for example, a septic, requiring septic to be a mound system would be, in my opinion, reasonable.
Okay.
Perennial vegetative berm on that lake side of the house would be a reasonable request.
And can we
Keeping back
make-
as far from the slope too would be reasonable as well.
Okay.
Planting additional trees, that it kind of might be bordering on unreasonable in my opinion, but you could certainly add it.
That's unreasonable.
Yep.
And that-
I mean, those trees were chopped out of their 25.
Removing more trees would be, they would have to plant more if they were to remove more.
If they would remove more, they would have to plant more.
Well, we'll just hope he does then.
I got a question. How far you want to move that thing closer to the road? How far?
11 feet,
11 feet. 5 inches.
11.5.
How big is the porch in there, the porch or entryway there? How far does that jut out from the main building? You're going too close, guys.
Well, that's what Matt would be taking that off of, that point to the road, right, Matt?
No, that's part of the building.
I know, but that would be going, where you got that 11 feet was how far off you could take that house to the road setbacks.
He's looking at the back.
No, I'm looking at the front,
The front entryway off
the
the
very front there. See the porch juts out there where the walkway comes around from the garage?
Yes, that's what I'm looking
That's
at
not 64 and
too.
a half feet off the center line. That is closer than that. You know, is that a 4-foot porch, 6-foot porch, 8-foot? What was their plan there? You gotta go from the front of that, not from the corner of the building, correct?
Where did you take that off of, Matt? The corner of the 64
I
point?
took it off the corner, but no, that's a good point.
You gotta be, when you're gonna get down that close, you gotta be very careful what you're
Yep.
restricting these folks to.
I guess that's about 2 foot.
11 feet would be the 20 feet, that would be the front of that porch, and then the rest of it would be, we'd be back further anyway. See that?
Yeah.
I think you're kind of cutting some of this stuff kind of close, but personally.
Yeah. You gotta give them some breather room in there.
So would the minimum be 105?
That's what I would think. What do you think, Paul? You good with that?
Yeah, I guess, my biggest concern, for sure, is the septic. But I do, I do want that house back as far as it can be, and be practical, I get that.
But that's about as far as it's gonna make it.
Right. I mean, if that's what it is, it is. And the berm, how is that designed or engineered? How does that come about?
They could work with
NRCS?
the SWCD to design that to the NRCS field office technical guideline specifications.
I'd add that. And then, just a question. The reason for this lake is that, by DNR, their rules, is it the reason they make it to these lengths, or, from the high water table, is it a matter of the amount of vegetation that can be there for filtering? Is it there because of, are they susceptible soils to sloughing if it has weight put on it?
Are you talking about the lake classifications in terms
Yeah,
of natural
and
environment
what's
lake?
going on here, right. What if, with a house there and that much vegetation, I mean, are we creating a problem because of the distance of 30 feet? That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm good with the variance. I don't want destruction to the lake.
You know, I don't know much about Lake 15, but when we were younger, we fished down there. I'm talking, there wasn't even buildings on the lake back then. I'm pretty old. And, but then one year it came around and it froze out severely because it's shallow. And I think that's why it's probably pretty sensitive.
Yeah.
Not a real deep lake, is it?
No, and that's one of the reasons, the criteria for being a natural environment lake. And a natural environment lake is, it doesn't mean that there can't be any development on the lake. Obviously, there's subdivisions on the lake. People recreate on the lake, but it's based on lake size and depth primarily. And the numbers of dwellings that were existing on it at the time of its classification as well can play into
Well,
it.
I'll ask you, as a staff person, do you see issues with what we're talking about that could be detrimental to the lake?
That could be, if they're under the 25% impervious surface, if they install the vegetative berm correctly, if they don't touch anything in the shore impact zone, which is 75 feet from the ordinary high water level, no, I don't see an issue.
Thank you.
One of the conditions, Paul, would be don't touch anything from 75 foot high.
That's already,
That is-
it's already in our land
And
development.
they didn't ask for a condition, variance from that, so they'd
No,
have to.
and you couldn't get one, I don't think, so,
That's not a condition we'd have to put on them.
no,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any other comments, questions with the, amongst the board for Matt?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. On a lake that we're on Becker County, the shore impact zone is 100 feet. And we can cut trees if we get permission, because if a tree is diseased, if a tree is
Yeah, dead and
damaged in
diseased.
some way, but it still requires permission from the county to do that. Whatever else I decide to do on my lake property with my trees is basically my business, whether my neighbors like it or not.
Yeah, it's, the intensive vegetation clearing applies to if there's a bluff impact zone on the property, or if or the shore impact zone.
Correct.
Doesn't apply to the rest of the lot.
That's correct. If they need to cut down a tree in order to fit this house in or something, the neighbors might not like it, but we're not going to restrict this person from doing that.
I'm not sure how you could.
No, I don't think we can.
Go ahead.
Are you content, or
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Are we done?
No, it's you can give the motion.
you want me to give the motion? I'll make a motion to approve the variance seeking the 150-foot setback from ordinary high water level of Lake 15 to 105 feet. Reduce the 100-foot setback from ordinary high water to 135 feet with a mound system for the septic. And reduce the minimum lot size to 26,076 square feet, so 0.6 acres. And reduce the minimum shoreline length from 225 feet to 85 feet. With conditions that the septic is a mound system and the vegetative berm is installed with NRCS and who else, Matt?
It'd be the NRCS Field Office
Field
Technical
Office.
Guidelines.
Their guidelines.
Yep, and that would be the SWCD that would know that.
All right. With that, also as a condition. And that is all I have for conditions.
Okay, I'll second it.
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. The variance will be granted. Thank you.
question for the chair. For number 6, can we skip number 6 and go to 7 with time constraints? Mr. Chair?
Can we skip Adam or?
Yep, the only thing I wanted to say about that is, we are gonna have a couple additional public input meetings for the comprehensive plan. And I can send this to all of you too. The first one will be Monday, July 26th from 6:30 to 8 PM at the Hitterdall Community Hall. And then there'll be one on Tuesday, July 27th from 6:30 to 8 at the Buffalo Red River Watershed District Office. So if you know people, get them to come, spread the word.
Do you want me to show up to hit it all?
Please,
All right.
bring your friends. Great. So that's all that I have for that.
Okay. New business.
Yeah, so, Mr. Bayer's term,
It's already, 3 years already?
it's been 3 years already. Yep. So, you know, if you've liked what he's done so far and brought to the board, be recommending a reappointment to another, this would be a third?
No, that'd be my
Second 3-year term. And, so be asking for a motion from the board to do that. And, then I would bring it to the Board of Commissioners for, approval. So this would be a recommendation, motion would be a recommendation to appoint Ezra Bayer to a second term on the Board of Adjustment.
So move.
I don't think I can make the motion, though.
All those in favor?
Oh,
say
you
aye.
moved it.
I move.
Motion?
Barry made it.
Harry did.
Barry
I
did?
move to make a motion
Second.
to appoint Ezra to a second 3-year term.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ezra will be reappointed. Thank you. Tim. Brings us to a point of adjournment. You have a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask, what was the number 6 going to be about anyway?
Just our comprehensive plan update.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, the main update that I had, and I told Adam not to come today because we kind of have a busy planning commission schedule and,
Okay.
so just yeah, a little bit. So the main thing just being that we're gonna have those public input meetings. They're Monday and Tuesday of next week, so.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
Thank you.